Hello and welcome to another Mindset X Factor podcast. Thank you for joining us again. We're joined today with Dave Boreham, who's the founder and the executive chairman of MCA Training International. And as you all know that have been following this podcast, my father. So welcome back again, Dad.
Thanks, Raynor. Great to be back.
Cool. So today what we're going to be discussing is how we can go about nurturing a positive mindset and also developing self-confidence. So my first question for you, Dad, is why is it so important to have a positive mindset?
It's a good question. Often people get a bit tired of positive thinking, the power of positive thinking and all this sort of thing. But people don't realize that you don't see the world as the world is. You see the world as you are. And if you're in a negative state and you're focusing on the negative around you, that's your world. You can change that. That's the power that we have within us as individuals. And we as human beings have the ability to change whatever we want through the power of our mind. So geese, for example, they learn by conditioned response. Animals learn by conditioned response. So you tell a flock of geese during winter to fly north, they'll go fly north. But you tell them to fly south, they don't go south. Tell them fly east, they won't go east, they won't go west, they go north. We have a choice. We can choose whether we want to go south, east, north, or west. That's our power. Now, if we have a negative framework in terms of by how we're seeing the world, our viewpoint of the world, our viewpoint of work, our viewpoint of our life, etc., that becomes our reality. And therefore, we fulfill that reality in our lives. And that's why we're creating our world every split millisecond of the day by the way we think. So that's why it's so incredibly important to focus on the positive and not the negative.
Yeah, no, that's very good. I think, for us, I think we live in a world where it's quite difficult to do that. There's a lot of bad things around. Everywhere we look, there's sort of negativity. I think negativity is the trend today, unfortunately. So how do you go about trying to develop this positive mindset in a world where there doesn't seem to be a lot of positivity?
When I coach people, I always coach them to make sure that they start focusing on the things that are positive. Because even though you say there's a lot of negativity, and there is, I mean, you open up the newspapers, you turn on the radio, switch on the TV, get onto social media, etc., most of it is a bunch of real negativity. But there's so much positivity going on in the world as well. People are doing a lot of good things. But if we don't look for that, we're not going to find it. So my message to people is really simply avoid the negative. Don't get involved in that. Don't, and people say, but then you won't know what's really happening. Of course you'll know what's happening because so many people tell you anyway. But you need to understand that it's the positivity that we need to focus on. So first of all, who are you spending your time with? Are they positive? Are they optimistic? Are they kind of people that uplift you and inspire you? What are you reading? What are you listening to? What are you focusing on in your life? Those things allow you to become more positive and get rid of the negative bombardment of negativity that happens in people's lives.
Yeah, and I think it's also a lot to do with the fact that, obviously there's bad stuff out there, but there's also a lot of good out in the world today. And as you were talking earlier, you were speaking about we see the world as we are, how we think and our mindset. And I think if we only see in the negative things, and that's where our focus is, I think it says a lot about ourselves, who we are as a person, and how we think and where our focus is. So that's like an indication to me of maybe I need to change the way I'm thinking, the way I'm seeing things. So that's something I need to work on if that is the case. Yes, those things are out there, but what am I focusing on? And I think what I focus on will have a huge impact on what I do, what I say, how I behave in my life, and obviously at the end of the day, what I get out of life as well. So that's
Yeah,
great
of course.
advice.
Yeah, it's all about the energy. Negative thoughts create negative energy. Positive thoughts create
Yeah,
positive energy. Everything's about energy. So
yeah,
you can have a toxic thought producing a very negative energy, or you can have a positive thought producing incredibly powerful energy. And you see people's lives change. You see them change phenomenally. I've done so much coaching with people and helped them to reframe their thinking, their mindsets. And it's amazing the kind of results they get as a result of reframing their mindsets. And people think, but how's that possible? Because what happens is you start creating a new world for yourself or a different world for yourself by the way you think, by the way you act, and by the results that you get as a result of that.
yeah,
I think it's also important to point out, Raynor, that, when you think negatively, you tend to bring about negative actions as a result of that. Therefore, you
yeah,
get negative results. That result gets fed back into our psyche. It's called psychofeedback. And the challenge of that is that through negativity, and behavioral psychologists have identified that the average human being will receive 19 negatives before they accept a positive. That's the average, but I mean, we can change that. But the problem is that if we're getting negative, 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 eventually it becomes a belief. And the minute the person believes it, it's true to that particular person. And the example that I often use is of the naturalist who goes to visit his friend, the farmer, on his farm. And there he sees, when he arrives in his 4x4 onto the farm, he sees this beautiful, powerful eagle, but it's pecking with the chickens. And he knocks on the door of the farmhouse and he says to his friend, the farmer, you know what? In your yard there, you have this incredibly powerful eagle, but it's standing and it's pecking with the chickens. And the farmer said something very profound to his friend. He said, you know that it's an eagle, and I know that it's an eagle, but the eagle believes it is a chicken, and therefore it behaves just like a chicken. Now, the interesting thing is, we might laugh at that, but that's how we are being conditioned if we allow ourselves to be conditioned by negativity. And so
yeah,
this naturalist says, well, let me teach this eagle to fly. And he takes this eagle and he puts the eagle on the end of his arm and he says, eagle, eagle, you are an eagle. Stretch your wings and fly. And it just falls down to the chickens. It's difficult to break beliefs, habits. Again, he picks up the eagle. This time he climbs on the roof of the farmhouse, says to the eagle, 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 you are an eagle. Stretch your wings and fly. Falls down and picks for the chickens. And so for the third time, he picks up this eagle, but he puts him into his 4x4 and he drives off into the mountains and he finds a sheer cliff of over 500 meters. And he stands there with that eagle and he says, eagle, eagle, you are an eagle. Stretch your wings and fly. And he pushes this eagle off the cliff. And the eagle just falls. But as the eagle falls, it opens up its wings. And the updraft catches that eagle and it flies off into the distance. Now, the moral of that story is that most people will only change when their backs are against the wall. They don't realize that they have the incredible, powerful ability to change whatever's happening in their lives if they want to. That's how powerful we are.
yeah. And often it's when we're falling off the cliff that we suddenly get the realization that we need to change, and sometimes it could be too late, right? Um, I think we also, and that's great advice. I love that story and that analogy. I think it's very applicable. We're also going to be speaking about how we need to go about developing self-confidence in this podcast. But I want to know, what's the relationship between nurturing a positive mindset and developing self-confidence? What's the sort of relationship between the two, and why is it so important to look at developing both of those things?
Well, the only way we can develop self-confidence is the opposite of confidence is fear. And so what happens is that when people avoid doing things, and negative people will tend to avoid doing things because they're afraid. And what happens is that the more you avoid, the more the fear becomes the reality and it grows and grows and grows. And therefore, people are paralyzed by fear. The more you confront issues, whatever they are, and you take small steps, gradually take small steps, each small step becomes a winning experience. I remember when you were a young man, a young little boy, I would take you to the soccer field and I'd let you stand right up against the net and kick the ball straight into the net because feedback would say, yes, I can. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Every time that ball went into the net, it was a winning experience for you. It built up your confidence. Then I'd gradually move you back, and you'd still be putting the ball in the back of the net because your belief had grown to the extent where you believed you could. And every now and again, another father would arrive with his son and put his son 15 meters back. And the little boy would miss the target and miss the target and so on. Every now and again, he would get it in, but he wasn't having enough winning experiences to build that confidence. So when we're positive in life, we tend to have far more confidence to do things, to confront the issues in our lives, to work through the obstacles that we have. And those obstacles are so important because that's what builds the confidence. That's what builds the character in a human being. And that's really the importance of confidence and the thinking that we have in our lives.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Dad. I think that's great advice. And I think for many of us, that's why having a positive mindset is so important because it's knowing that we can do those things and having that sort of in a way that belief, that confidence as well that we can do those things. And then as we go out and do it and see a world that we can do it, then that's what allows us to have those winning experiences, as you say, those confidence building experiences. And that's so important. I think as well, a lot of people, when they look at confidence, a question I know you get asked a lot and that I get asked a lot is the difference between confidence and arrogance. I think a lot of people know that there is a difference, that confidence is different to arrogance. But I think in practicality, in the real world, when people are acting out and behaving in certain ways, I think the line gets sort of blurred and people don't actually know what confidence looks like practically and what arrogance looks like. So how can you tell the difference between confidence and arrogance practically?
Oh, that's a brilliant, brilliant question. Um, the interesting thing is confidence is authentic. Arrogance is a mask for confidence. It's
Mm.
non-authentic. And so the difference is really when you find somebody who's confident, they don't have to boast. They don't have to try and prove themselves because they feel it. It's part of who they are. It's real. It's authentic. It's in their character. It's part of their character. It's not a pretense. When I don't have that, then I have to pretend and I have to exert this confident demeanor. Meanwhile, feeling within myself that I'm not quite sure and feel insecure, etc., etc. And so really the difference is just authenticity versus non-authenticity at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think, we won't name and shame right now, but we know examples of people that are confident and those that aren't. And you can see it, the ones that have to try to prove themselves and try to say that they're great at everything or whatever it might be. That just shows that there's a lot of insecurity there, which is the opposite to confidence, to self-confidence and to believing in yourself, as you've said. I think this is great advice. Looking back on what you've discussed with me today, having a positive mindset helps us to see a world that is there to give us everything we need, that we really want out of life, to be successful, to have the life that we truly want to live. Being able to develop that self-confidence gives us that fear and that ability to well, not that fear, but the courage and the ability to overcome the fear that often comes into our lives that prevents us from achieving what we want to achieve, but gives us that knowledge that we know that we can do it and helps us to actually go out there practically and to get things done so that we can have the life that we want to have, that we see and we have this positive mindset that allows us to see that. So I can see how they work hand in hand and why it's so important to develop those things. So thank you so much. Do you have any
Just one
closing
thing.
remarks about
Yeah,
that? Yeah.
yeah, thanks, Raynor. Just one thing is that, you know, I have over the years started practicing what I call gratitude. And I know gratitude is being spoken about more and more frequently, but the impact of the gratitude is astounding. It really and truly is. because a grateful heart cannot be negative. That's the power of it. And
Yeah.
so when we share and experience and are grateful for the things and for opportunities and for life and for who we are and for what we're about and for what we've been given, uh, it's really difficult to be negative in life because there's
Yeah.
just so much. There's so much abundance, so much to be really and truly grateful for in our lives. So really, I think that's an important aspect of being
Yeah.
positive in life.
Yeah. And I think that's a great way to end it in saying that despite everything, there is a lot to be grateful for. So if no matter what, if we can always look for those things that we are grateful for, no matter what situation or circumstance we're in, and we can always find the positive out of any situation. I think that's very, very true. So thank you so much, Dad. I appreciate all your counsel and advice again on this podcast. Thank you to everyone who's listened in or watched. Remember to please like and subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you're watching or listening to it on. And to please share with your friends and colleagues, whoever you may feel could benefit from this. Thank you again. And please remember to take care. And I always like to tell people, remember to never give up. So thank you so much. Take care and never give up. Cheers.